Nobody can touch me because I would get blacklisted for that.
The persona in the front that we put forward into the universe.
You'd be standing and
Hi, I'm Gabby. Because I will miss that aspect.
something else. Yeah.
You're people, you're not creatures. I'm so sorry. I don't care if you hate me.
Just no. Tissue paper.
I dated a lot of Sagittarius men, and that just was not working.
Girls love her, boys love her.
And those connections and ideas change. 5% of podcasts don't make it past the first year. Hello and welcome back to the Z-List Celebrities. Today I have a very special guest who is going to coach us through all things astrology, what is going on in the world, how to shift your mindset for 2024, because that is what we're all trying to figure out for the next couple of weeks. This is Asya, correct? I said that right?
Yes,
Asya?
you did. Thank you.
Perfect. Yes, online you've got a different spelling, so I like to make sure that everybody knows exactly how to pronounce it. But Asya, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, how you kind of got into this industry, and how it all kind of took off.
Sure. Thank you so much, Gabby, for having me on. I really appreciate it. So I'm an astrologer and a coach. I also do some tarot on the side, but I don't really do that as much in sessions. It's more just for fun for me and my friends. But I originally got into astrology because I was trying to prove it wrong many years ago. I'm naturally very, very skeptical about a lot of stuff. And that's probably all the Scorpio in my chart. And so I had a reading with somebody and I went in there kind of smug and I was like, yeah, okay, we'll see. I'm not going to tell her anything because I want to see if, she can, if this person's really as good as they say they are, they'll figure it out. Right. And I was pretty blown away by what she could see in my chart. And I was like, wow. I said, okay, maybe there's something to this, but I still don't believe it. So I started digging and studying it on my own, taking a lot of courses, classes, studying every single book under the sun. And it's almost like the more I studied astrology to prove it wrong, the more I was proven wrong. And it's every time I tried to prove something to every time I looked for confirmation bias in my favor, something else came up and I was like, oh, there's actually something to this. There's actually merit to this. And I just became obsessive with researching and studying it. And then I started doing readings for friends on the side and really talking about their charts. And they were just fascinated with I just have a really different, unique approach to astrology. So they were really fascinated with my point of view on it. And it kind of originally started off as fun and then went into doing readings for friends. And they were like, you really need to start doing this for people because I've had readings with other astrologers. You just have a different perspective. I think it really helps bring the information in a digestible way to people. And then it just kind of, domino affected after that.
I love that it started with skepticism because you don't hear that often. Most people, it's oh, well, because even my astrology story and everybody who listens to the podcast already knows this, but for a little background for you, when I was about 16, my aunt who really has a lot of psychic ability and always has charted us and everything like that, she gave me my first tarot cards. So I read for a lot of people. I always like to remind people I'm not a psychic, but I can definitely read cards and I can walk you through your chart and do all of the astrology things. And it's kind of the same vibe as you. It's definitely more so not like you, but more so a hobby for me that I'll pick up for strangers on occasion, but it's usually my girlfriends coming and they're like, okay, it's been 3 months. I'm ready for my tarot reading. And I was raised around it. So for me, it was never skepticism, but I definitely walked into a relationship where Kyle had never had experience with it. So he's gotten to learn and watching his eyes open and get excited about it because it is so weirdly interesting. I also find it funny when it's always the people that are astrology is not real. It's the people that are well, I'm a Taurus and I don't even act like a Taurus. And then once they learn that your chart makes up so much more, you're not a Taurus. I tell people all the time, you're not a Taurus. You're so many other things. Okay, cool. Your sun is Taurus, but you are not a Taurus. You're a Scorpio, a Taurus, a Virgo, something. So I think that that's what blew my mind when I started figuring that out is you are not one thing. You are not your sun sign. And once you can get past that, I think people become a little bit more open to it because it feels less boxed in. I feel just relying on your sun sign kind of boxes you in a little bit. So that's how I kind of really started being okay, no, this has fact to it. This feels better to me, but I love that it came from a skeptic perspective. I do want to ask, because I feel a lot of people ask me for recommendations. What were some of the books that really opened you up? Do you, off the top of your head, if you know any?
honestly, I've read so many. I read Chris Brennan's book, Hellenistic Astrology. I read The Astrology of You and Me. I read Robert Hand's like Planets in Transit, Planets and Aspects. There's one that I'm reading now that's like so profound. It's called Gods of Change, and it's all about like the life-changing transits of like Uranus and Pluto. And there's, oh my God, I could probably talk for an hour about just the books.
Well, and see, that's like the Astrology of You and Me. I think I've mentioned it on this podcast at least like 6 times. That's one of my favorites because of how you're like able to break down the relationships. I think it's so cool. But definitely, I always am looking for more recommendations. So I'll add those to my list and people can kind of reference this for their list. But let's kind of shift into what are we going to see astrology forecast wise for 2024? What's important? What's notable? What should people kind of take away into this year?
Okay, I don't think we have enough time for everything, but we'll do as much as we can because there's a lot that's notable. The thing that I want to make sure that I like really emphasize here is 2023 was like a build-up year, and 2024 is going to continue to be a changing build-up year because I think, pardon my language, shit's really going to hit the fan in 2025.
We cussed here. Good.
Okay, great. I'm always conscious of that stuff. So this is still going to be like another building year, but there's going to be a lot of big shifts and changes that are starting this year, but there's going to be even more changes the following year. So the thing that I really want people to understand is if you are stuck in like old patterns of thinking, old patterns of behavior, if you are trying to control things and you are trying to grasp onto what you know, this is going to be a challenging year for you because of all of the shifts and all the changes that are going to go into 2024 and 2025. And the reason why I say is because there's going to be so much in the stars and so much in the astrology that's going to be shifting us to pivot and change. And the people that are not comfortable with change, I think are going to have a little bit more of a challenging time. I feel like a lot of my clients, what I've been seeing is either people are terrified or they're really excited because they've been just like waiting for things to shift and change.
See,
So
it's me. I'm the problem. I don't like change. So this is terrifying.
well, I've seen your chart. You have a lot of fixed energy, like a lot, and fixed signs don't like change unless they're controlling the change themselves. So if like you're controlling the change and you're implementing the change, then you're okay with it, but you don't like when things are out of your control.
Well, it's like a perfect example. I needed a new computer crapped out on me, and I wanted the exact same one that I had. Like my fiance was like, for Christmas, I'll get you whatever you want. We can upgrade you. We can do this. And I was like, nope, get me the same one. I don't want to change it. I like it how it is. He wanted to get me a new one. I was like, absolutely not. I need to be comfortable with my computer. I want the old version. You don't even have to give me an upgraded version. Give me the old one. But then he gets so confused and he's like, how did you travel in a van and just live your day different every day and like change your city every day, but you can't change your computer? And I was like, I don't know. I cannot explain to you, but I physically cannot do it. So I do feel like my placements get in the way sometimes with that. So next year makes me a little nervy.
Okay. Well, I didn't mean to like fearmonger for you, but I wanted to prepare you. But you know what? I'm gonna actually challenge you there, and I'm gonna ask you a question. Do you feel like the new computer you got now is helping you more?
Well, I mean, it's the same one, but a different color. So.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I was trying to prove a point about how sometimes when we learn to go with the flow, things may actually work in our favor more.
And I'm fully cognizant that like I could make my life easier. So like I'm a Windows girly. I grew up on Windows, and everybody tells me all the time with my line of work, they're like, if you switch to Mac, your life will be easier because you can connect your phone, things like that. But I would have to spend a good month learning how to do a Mac, and I know long run it's something I need to learn how to do, and it will make my life easier. But you best believe like I have not committed to doing that month of learning how to use a Mac, so I just keep buying Windows computers.
That's amazing. You know? By the way, I'm just as guilty of this because I couldn't get on this podcast episode today because I didn't update my browser.
We did have a little struggle there. It was a hiccup. We're good now. It's Mercury retrograde. We're in the thick of it. That's something we definitely can address too. I know that's not a 2024 forward thing, but a lot of people online are always asking me like, what's the best practices during Mercury retrograde? What do you recommend on like making a smoother process? Why do we have these emotions we have during Mercury retrograde? Do you want to kind of dive into that, since we'll still be in Mercury retrograde until January 1st, correct?
Yeah. January 1st is when it moves direct. I would love to talk about that, especially because we have a few Mercury retrogrades every year. We're going to have three next year. And we usually have between 3 and 4 every single year. So this is not like anything new that we're not used to or familiar with. The thing to understand about all retrogrades, because all planets retrograde at some point, one time or the other, is whenever there's a retrograde happening, it's almost like it appears like the planet is going backwards, but it's not actually going backwards. It's just that everything else is continuing to move forward and that planet is slowing down. So it appears as if it's, again, going backwards, but it's not. So when things slow down, it's really example of any retrograde, but especially Mercury retrogrades, it's really a time to take a pause, take a breath, and reflect, review, reanalyze, reassess, like all of those popular rewords. And what happens is a lot of people, because there's usually right before retrograde, there's usually momentum to move forward, and then suddenly retrograde hits and you're like, damn it, I thought I was going forward and now I'm just like, why are things, it feels like stagnation. And the thing that I want to mention is if there's a slowdown period, it's happening for a reason. So I think I want people to change their perspective on the significance of retrogrades, because let's say, for example, you're launching, I talk a lot of metaphors because I feel like it helps people integrate astrology better.
Totally. I get it.
So let's say you want to launch a website, right? And you have all this momentum, you're doing all this like build up, you're doing all these edits and everything. And you're like, okay, I'm ready to launch. And suddenly a retrograde hits and you're like, oh, why do I keep having these delays? Like, this isn't working. Maybe that's actually happening in your favor. Maybe you're supposed to take this time to review and reflect and go through the edits of the website so that when you finally launch, it doesn't crash on you, right? So this is an example of like how to use this energy in your favor. If there's a retrograde, what do you need to be reviewing? What do you need to be reflecting on so that you can change your perspective? So when the planet moves direct again, you have a new perspective on it. And maybe you actually shift the momentum or the decisions that you were going to make prior to the retrograde because you've had this reflection period.
Well, and it's so funny. I feel like your intuition's on key today because my friend and I, and it's still kind of like a surprise, but this is a little teaser. We are launching something pretty special on January 1st, and we intentionally did January 1st because I knew Mercury retrograde would be over. I felt like it's not even about us necessarily and like our slowdown, but I was like, I want other people to be invested and excited about it. And I know when people are in their own headspace of reevaluating, they cannot take on new information. So I was like, the first will be a great day because everybody almost like zooms out of it, I feel like, and they're ready to go. So I was like, that's the perfect kind of day to launch things. And in this case, like it does involve a website and things like that. So it's like funny that you brought that up because it's one of those things where I'm using this period instead to like review it, check the website over again, make sure it's all good, and then be able to like launch that after Mercury retrograde and make those big decisions. Same kind of deals. I tell people my example, my metaphor every time is like I go to cars. I'm like, you don't want to buy a car during Mercury retrograde. It's a big life choice. It's a big decision. And usually what ends up happening is after we exit out of that Mercury retrograde, you see problems with the car, or it's not exactly what you thought it was, or things like that. And I say the same thing with contracts too. A lot of contracts go null and void after Mercury retrograde. It's like, those are my big ones that I always tell people, but I like the idea of reevaluate and slow down. I think that that's a great way to kind of look at it. But it's weird. Last year we didn't have a Mercury retrograde in December, did we? I don't feel like we did.
I can't speak to that. I have to recheck the astrology. I've been so busy focusing on 2024's astrology that if you ask me about last year, I'm like,
who's
wait,
2022? Yeah, who's 2022? But I will say, I don't think we did. And I think it's weird to have it around the holidays. I think that's why people are so stressed because they're so used to go, go, go during the holidays that like slowing down with the holidays is really difficult. So,
but sometimes it does. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. No, but sometimes it does align because in December, naturally, we are doing a lot of reflecting on the past year, right? So we're doing reflecting so that we can like start our New Year's resolutions. We could be, okay, how do I want new year, new me, right? Like, how do I want to approach the new year? So there is naturally some reflection that happens in December for most people. And I think sometimes when there's a Mercury retrograde that's also happening, it's like a deeper sense of reflection. And this is why also like so many exes reach out during Mercury retrogrades. I did a video on this on my Instagram because there is a lot of reviewing and reflection that happens. And so people are like, oh, well, maybe I should go back and like talk to this person again. Or maybe this should happen. Like it's about changing your perspective. So sometimes you shift your perspective on what you thought of a person, or like, let's say you bought the car and now suddenly you're like, oh man, I shouldn't have jumped the gun on that car. Like if I had known, if I'd spent more time researching it and slowing down and doing my due diligence, maybe I would have realized like these are things that naturally happen with this car and that's not something I wanted. Maybe I wanted an electric car or whatever the case is.
Well, and I think that's a great way to put it too. You said exes, but I feel like for me, obviously, like no exes are reaching out to me. I'm about to get married. They'd be pretty bold. But I've noticed like past friends, past family members, like that. And I know I'm like in my little wedding season bubble right now too, so that's a lot of cause of it. But I feel like I've seen a lot of just like anybody from the past that's not like in my present, just like kind of coming out of the woodworks. And I do think that that's kind of the same thing. It's that review period of like, oh, okay, like the time has passed, emotions have settled down, people are like reaching out, and it's so weird because like it feels like it happens all at once, but then there is this astrological explanation for it, and that's where I think that people call it coincidence all the time, but it's quite literally in our world that's the scientific astrology piece of it. So it's very interesting to see. But let's get back to 2024. I believe was it this year that it started, or is it next year that's like the year of the Aquarian?
Okay, so so you're talking about Pluto moving into Aquarius, right?
Yes.
This is a big, big, big.
It's a big deal. Yeah.
It is a big deal. I don't want to like. I could literally talk about. Well, I'm doing a webinar about this actually next month, but
Okay.
I could spend like 3 hours talking about just this transit alone because of how significant it is. Pluto. Okay, let me slow down a little bit. Pluto briefly dipped into Aquarius this year, March 23rd to June 10th. So it's almost like it dipped its feet in the pool to test the waters, but it didn't like fully jump in yet. Right?
Okay.
Just like testing the temperature. Next year, January 20th, which is like one of the first big astrological shifts that we're having next year, January 20th, Pluto is going to go into Aquarius and stay there for 9 months. Then it's going to retrograde again in Capricorn for another 2 months. And then on November 19th, it's going to go back into Aquarius. And then once it stays in Aquarius on November 19th, it's going to stay there for another 20 years.
20
so
years.
That is a big deal
like
because...
Okay. Interesting.
Oh, sorry?
No, I was like, okay, so like next year's kind of like, it's more of it, but it's still like another tester, and then it goes full on for the 20 years.
It's another tester, but we're really going to see the significance of it more because this year it really was only in that sign for like 2.5 months. So some people didn't really see the significance of that yet. This year it's going to be there for the majority of the year before it retrogrades again. So we're really going to see some of those big implements in change because Pluto is all about death, rebirth, transformation, metamorphosis. It wants big shifts. Last time Pluto was in Aquarius, we had the American Revolution, we had the French Revolution. There was a lot of uprising that happened.
Well, so, okay, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. This is just like from my very brief like study of it and knowledge. As an Aquarian, I was like, I need to like look into that more. So I started looking into that.
And you have a lot of Aquarius in your chart.
I do. So I was like, this is my time. But at the same time, as an Aquarian, I feel like I'm constantly trying to challenge social norms and things like that. And I feel like that's what a lot of this, like you said, with like all of these histories of like different civil wars and things like that. I'm very curious to see how, especially Generation Z, handles this, because I feel like they've already shown through election years and things like that that they like to rock the boat. And I feel like that could go very weird, especially in America. Like, I feel like that could go very weird really quickly, but like in a change kind of aspect. And then after that, and this is where I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, after the 20 years, we enter into Pisces, correct? And with Pisces, that emotional sign, I love, all of my girlfriends are Pisces. I love a Pisces personally. I know some people have got beef with Pisces, but I love a Pisces because they always take my advice and they're emotionally driven. And I just... As an Aquarius, I want people to take my advice. So like Pisces are just my bestie. But entering into that Pisces era, I feel like Aquarians are going to stir a lot of shit up and like create a lot of turmoil. And then I feel like the Pisces are going to kind of come in and heal everything. And I'm really excited to see how that goes.
Yeah, I do agree with that. But with every like pro, there's always a con, right? There's always a binary. And I think the thing about Pisces placements that people forget, again, I'm not trying to fearmonger. I'm a Scorpio through and through. So I'm also a realist. the thing that I will say is like Pisces placements also tend to have escapism habits.
Oh yeah.
So almost like they live so much in the dream world and the fantasy, like they don't even want to be in the 3D, right? Like it's almost like I have a lot of Pisces friends or like people in my life who have a lot of Pisces placements. Like when they don't want to deal with real life, they're like, I want to take a nap because they just want they want to
A
like go in the dream
vacation.
world. I need to disconnect, right? Or meditate or whatever they're doing, which is a beautiful thing, right? Like they're connecting to the astral. But
Yep.
what's important to understand is like sometimes we actually do need to be grounded here. And I think that we're going to have both. We're going to have so much healing, but we're also going to have people who like can't handle the changes of Pluto and Aquarius that have happened for 20 years that are going to reach for more escapism. So there's going to be like that, the like polarity of both as well, right? Like the evolution of like the spiritual awakenings and also like the people that again can't handle the changes and are reaching through other modalities to deal with that.
How do
That would be my
you
prediction.
do you feel like that's just going to be something where like almost, oh my gosh, I'm fear mongering, but like for me obviously it's hard not to with the world we live in, like think about like, you know, civil wars, world wars, things like that. And I do feel like that would all be more in like the Aquarian time zone, but after we enter into that Pisces, are you more so afraid of like a divide more in those kinds of people that are using escapism versus realism, or how do you see that kind of playing out?
Obviously like TBD, we'll see how it happens, right?
Yeah.
But I see that
Predictions.
I feel like there will be the thing about Pisces to understand um in astrology is Pisces is a culmination of all of the signs before it. So it's like it's a time of endings because it's like lived through the entire zodiac before. So I think there's going to be a lot of like extremes that also happen when Pluto is in Pisces because what happens after Pluto, I know we're like really getting ahead here,
Yeah.
but like what happens after Pluto in Pisces is Pluto moves into Aries and it's almost like a brand new rebirth cycle, right? Because Aries is the beginning of the zodiac again. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if there's more of a shift, but the people, again, this is all continued with like the people that are not as comfortable with change are gonna it's gonna be forcing them to get more comfortable because Pisces is also mutable. So it's changeable, it's adaptable, it's not as fixed like Aquarius is or any of the other fixed signs, right? So there's gonna be a sense of like mutability and adaptability that people are gonna have to bring.
I think that that's a really good point to bring up too. Just a little side note for people that are still like kind of learning about astrology. We like the start of the zodiac, it is Aries. It's not like our calendar year. It's not January. So
Yeah.
Capricorn is not the start. I feel like people get that confused a lot. Capricorn is not the start of it. So Aquarius and Pisces, although they're in the beginning of our months, they're the end of that zodiac cycle.
Mhm.
So that's a good point as well, as like we jump into Aries. That is a complete new cycle. So I'm curious to see how it plays out. Obviously, we're not
Yeah,
future
me too.
predictors, but we can try and use past history. I think that
Mhm.
the wild thing is everybody says it, and it's a common saying that history repeats itself. But like, it's a saying for a reason because it actually happens. And I'm like, okay, guys, like let's be conscious, let's be aware. Like history repeats itself. Like so, use that history to kind of drive yourself into the next era. But I'm very curious to see how it works out. We'll jump back to 2024 now,
Yeah.
just so like I feel like people need sometimes that explanation to look forward to, and now we can really like break into 2024. I would love to know more so like what you think. I have a lot of people that come to me either for relationship ideas of how it's going to go for the next year, or like so how your inner workings with if you have a partner or not, if you're single or not, like what that looks like, and then also financial goals. I think those are my biggest two things that I'm approached
Yeah.
with. So I would love to address those.
Okay, sure. So, so in regards to, we'll start with the relationship aspect.
Mhm.
First of all, wherever Jupiter is also switching signs mid-year. Right now, Jupiter is in Taurus.
Mhm.
And then on May 25th, it's going to move into Gemini. So for the people that have Gemini in their seventh house, it's going to be like a more positive, and also people who have Taurus in the seventh house, it's like a really nice completion with relationships. And then when it moves into Gemini, like those people, you know, the Sagittarius risings are going to be experiencing that as well. So I like to look at like where Jupiter and Venus transit and stuff, but more importantly, the most important thing generally, because we can't get into really big specifics with everybody's chart because everyone's so different, is to understand where the nodes are. And the North Node and the South Node right now, North Node is in Aries and the South Node is in Libra. And these are very much related to relationships, especially with the South Node in Libra. And
Yeah.
these nodes will continue, the North Node and the South Node will continue to stay in Aries and Libra throughout the next year. We had eclipses this past year in those two signs, and we will continue to have eclipses in 2024 in the spring, and I can give you those exact dates if you'd like, in the spring and also in the fall. So the most important thing to understand with relationships is when you look at the South Node in Libra, Libra is very harmonious. It's very diplomatic. It's almost like sometimes too diplomatic and harmonious in relationships. It can almost come off like self-sacrificial in a way, and not have good boundaries and be used to being in the shadow of another person. And North Node, so that's where the South Node is in currently. And the South Node is all about like karmic clearing and what we need to be releasing for the year. And so North Node in Aries is all about stepping into individuality, independence through relationships, and also stepping into like being seen and not being in other people's shadows. So there's going to be a big theme of like people are going to be the people that don't have good boundaries are going to have to learn good boundaries. There's a lot of lessons next year in regards to like, is this a healthy relationship for me? Am I giving too much? Where is the balance, right? Libra is all about balance. So am I giving too much? Am I over giving? Or if my partner is showing up the same way that I am, where are my boundaries? Am I losing myself in this dynamic? Where have I lost myself? And Aries is all about like speaking up your truth and standing up for yourself. So if you're in a relationship dynamic where like you're with a partner who is supportive and encouraging and inspiring you to be your true authentic self, those relationships are going to thrive, right?
Yeah.
But if you're in toxic environments where people are like competitive with you and people are trying to bring you down, where people don't even realize it sometimes, right? Like sometimes people in certain relationship dynamics, they think they're healthy and then their partner is extremely competitive and it's like, oh, I want you to be successful as long as like you don't outshine me. That is very much the lessons that we're trying to be clearing. It's all about collaboration and balance and like equal give and take. It's not about like I'll do this for you so you could do this for me. Like it's like how can I help lift my partner up? So the relationships that people are in that are a little bit more self-sacrificial, those are going to be lessons that you need to learn in the next year. And most importantly, being boundaries.
Oh, and I think it goes, and it's on obviously both sides because there's two sides of a relationship, and I'll definitely be the one to say and like own it. And I think that's the Aquarius in me. My fiance Kyle, he's a Libra, and he is very self-sacrificial. I'm definitely like treated like a princess, which is great, but like I definitely could work on being more giving in situations because the world does revolve around me in this house, and so like that's something that I know I'm consciously working on. But it's one of those where watching him set boundaries is going to be interesting because it won't be something I'm used to, but it's something he needs to do. So like that's going to be an interesting dynamic because although he'll be shifting for the better for him, it's going to shift my world in a way that I'm like, okay, how does this now make me feel? Or how do I readjust to this? Because we've lived a certain way for so long. So those will be like really interesting shifts, but he's definitely the true to core Libra. Like everything has to be like very just and fair. Everything has to be balanced. He's very romantic, but like it's just everything's black and white. Whereas like as you know, Aquarius is very, well, like I could live in this gray area and this could be happening. Like everything's just like woo in my head. And he's just like, no, this is right. This is wrong. So it's going to be interesting to see that shift in relationship. But I would love to also know kind of what we've got going on financially for like, and I know it's hard to individualize because you can't really individualize, but I mean, obviously I feel like I'm in the age category in the group where people are settling down, wanting to buy homes and can't because obviously our economy's messy, and like we're seeing a rise in so much in inflation that like a lot of people are struggling financially. And I think that's a question I get a lot is people want to work for themselves, people want to be able to explore new financial opportunities but not knowing if it's the right time. And I think astrology can be a huge piece on that, on knowing if it's a good time to step out into your own new self. So tell us a little bit about that.
So two things. By the way, I want to commend you on your like self-awareness because I feel like you're going to handle a lot of these shifts so much better. I was talking more about like the people who are not really aware of that dynamic in their relationships, but you got this. Don't worry. I know you'll like.
I'm very self-aware. It doesn't mean I'm good with it. I know I'm doing it, but like I can't really stop myself.
But like the first step is like being again aware of it and knowing that like him setting boundaries in your relationship is going to help both of you in the long run.
Yeah.
Let's move back to the financial stuff. So I just want to go back to Pluto real quick, because when Pluto moved into Capricorn, initially, Capricorn rules authoritarian governments, corporations. Those are things that like bank systems, governments, like I said, and those things grew in power when Pluto moved into Capricorn in 2008. But also, what else happened in 2008 when Pluto moved in there? We had the housing crisis, right?
Yeah.
And like the stock market crashed. So Pluto moving into Aquarius is going to be like a lot of changes financially as well, in regards to like how, like, as these corporations have moved up in power, right? As these governments have gained power, like, how is this helping the collective? Because Aquarius is all about the collective and humanity, right? Like, how is this helping the collective? How is it not helping? And that's why I think there's going to be like a lot of revolutionary energy and uprising, because there's going to be a lot of people realizing like, well, this isn't actually helping everybody, and this isn't actually helping me. It's just helping the 1%, right? So like, how do we revolutionize this, right, for lack of a better, or rebel against this maybe in a way? But that being said, with like Pluto implementing a lot of these changes financially, we also have, in the most important financial sign, which is Taurus, we have Uranus in Taurus and we have Jupiter in Taurus. And those two planets, Uranus has been in Taurus since 2018. So this is why like the financial system has been like very erratic and like almost roller coastery, because Uranus energy is very it's like a lightning bolt. You never know where it's going to go, right? And so Jupiter is also in Taurus. And for these two planets to align in the same sign, especially Taurus, it happens very rarely, because Jupiter is in a sign for a year and it takes 12 years to go through the entire zodiac. Uranus is in a sign for like years and years and years. So they're basically going through two separate different cycles. And for them to align in the same sign, especially in a financially dominant sign of Taurus, right? That rules material things and like material things and money and financial systems. It's a rare thing. So I think one of my favorite transits that's also going to be like pretty shocking, I think, is going to be on April 20th this year, because Jupiter and Uranus are going to conjunct each other in the sign of Taurus. And so Uranus is very like shocking, surprising, lightning bolt energy, and Jupiter is the biggest planet in the solar system, so it expands whatever it touches. So I think that this could be like really good financial rewards for a lot of people if they're like planting the seeds in the right areas of their life. So I would say like, just make sure you're discerning where you're putting your money, where you're putting your time, where you're putting your effort, because this energy could help you like it's almost like Jupiter expands and whatever it grows, and then like this planet of like shock, like electricity is going to like help blow things up in a way. It could be like really financially rewarding for a lot of people.
Okay, so that's good to know. So do you feel like that this is definitely more of an era of discernment in like where you're putting your energy? Like and this is more actually honestly on a personal level, but I know a lot of people struggle with it as well, especially if you're already self-employed or an entrepreneur. I have a problem where I'm constantly like, I have 8 different jobs because I can't pick one, or I can't figure out which one's the most financially profitable for me. Is this the time to actually narrow and figure that out? Or is it still a good idea to kind of have your hands in a ton of different baskets?
Well, that is a little bit more specific on like everyone's charts.
Okay.
I would say Jupiter and Taurus, it's a good time to like continue growing what you've already been growing,
Investing
right?
in.
If
Okay.
you're being called, I will tell you this, if you're being called to do something different, it could also be a good year to start that, because there's going to be a lot of shifts in the astrology, not just next year, but again in 2025. In 2025, every single planet is going to shift signs for the first time, like that hasn't in years. There's going to be a huge energy shift. So the thing that I want to say here, I know I'm like not really giving you a clear answer, is
No, you're fine.
this is a year where you really need to follow your intuition. So if there's fear around things, I would say, where is that fear coming from? Are you like afraid of success, or are you afraid of failure? Because if you're being pulled to like go and do something really innovative, Pluto moving into Aquarius is pushing for transformation, is pushing for innovation, is pushing for like differences in the collective. If you're in a job where you're like, I hate this job, I'm miserable, like I'm being pulled to do something like more helpful and expansive to other people, and be more authentic. Anything that is pushing you to be more authentic is the direction you need to go. That is very Aquarian energy. Like, where is my authenticity? So if your authenticity is like, I love this job, I'm going to keep building here, great, stay with that. Like, plant those seeds there. But if your authenticity is like, I'm doing all these different things, I don't really feel aligned to all of them, I'm kind of just doing them because I need to do them, that may be the time for you to narrow down and pick one.
Okay. No, I think that's really helpful. What are some kind of tips going into 2024 that you feel like are going to help people keep grounded, or like, are there daily practices people can do to kind of figure out, minus the basic? I mean, obviously, in an ideal world, everybody would come to someone like you or I and just ask us all their astrology questions weekly or monthly or check in with us. But obviously, a lot of people don't do that. And I know people like have apps and things like that. And I feel like they're so generic and they don't help. So what's like a daily practice people can exercise that can kind of help them through 2024 on the like spectrum of astrology?
I think this sounds obvious, but sometimes the most obvious things are what we need to hear.
Mhm.
Really like narrowing in on your intuition and listening to yourself, because so much of the astrology is trying to shift us from listening to other people and start trusting ourselves and our gut more. So whether that means you're journaling, whether that means you're meditating, because what's going to happen is when we have all of these shifts going on outside of us externally, it's easy to get disconnected from ourselves and be like, oh my God, I can't deal with all these changes. I can't deal with this chaos. The only way that you're going to be able to handle and navigate this next year is if you go inward and connect with yourself. So for some people, they're going to have a spiritual awakening for the first time they've never had one. For some people, there's going to be a lot of people researching and going into modalities that they haven't considered, right? There's going to be people going to, I think there's going to be people going into therapy that have never considered going into therapy, maybe even had a stigma against it, right? There's going to be people studying astrology that were never interested in before. There's going to be people going to do meditation, breath work, journaling, like things, going outside in nature and just like grounding yourself, things that like, I would say start, the most important advice I want to give now is whatever you need to do to like connect to yourself so that you're not easily shifted or swayed by like everything externally going on around you. Start the practice now. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. Like if you're in your mind, you're like, you know what? I should be meditating every day. I should be journaling every day. I should be doing this. Why are you waiting? Right? The most important thing I want to tell everybody is start the practice now so that it becomes a habit, because it's really hard to start something when you're in a triggered state or when you're in a reactionary state. And a lot of the astrology is going to be triggering and forcing us to react and take action next year. And if you're already have like a routine in place of like, okay, when I need to ground and connect with myself, this is what I need to do. I already know that meditation works for me, or I know that breath work works for me, or I know that journaling works for me, or taking naps works for me, whatever it is, or a bath, whatever it is, painting, anything that helps you connect to yourself more, start the routine now so that as these changes start happening, you're not like thrown off of the tightrope.
Well, and I think that that's like, you brought up like more than just manifestation and breath work and things like that. I think a lot of people are deterred from it because, I mean, manifesting and meditating is really difficult. Like, nobody's devaluing that. Like, it's very hard to sit still for an hour, or honestly, I can't meditate for more than 5 minutes. And even then, my brain wanders, and like the whole goal is to turn your brain off. So like, if you can like do it through painting or do it in a bath or something, like, just at least, I guess my only advice in that would be just put your phone away. Like, if you can do 10 minutes a day without your phone, that's already grounding you, because like these little devices that we have drive us insane. And I feel like it's half of our problem. And I think that that could be part of the shift that you need. So like, even if it's you light a candle and you just make yourself a tea mindlessly, and then you just sit there and you look at your dog, cool. You put your phone away. If you can do that 10 times a day, that's a habit. That can be your self-care. That can be your grounding work. You don't need to like be and like breath working, because it's hard. I can do it in yoga. Like, I can meditate while I'm at yoga, and I can do my breath work while I'm at yoga because somebody's guiding me through it. But if I don't have a guide, hell no, can't do it. She'll sit here and she'll be like, well, I need to get this done. I need to get this done. And I do it in yoga too. I have a checklist where I'm like, well, when I get home, I need to do this, this, and this. And that's what you're trying to avoid. So finding an activity where you really can turn your brain off and not have screens. I feel like that's the key too. Because like, I have a lot of people that come home and they're like, well, I get home from the work day and then I watch my show, and it's a mindless show, so I don't have to think about it. And I'm like, that's great. But like, it's still like that screen in your face. And I just don't feel like that's the same kind of grounding that I think that we're going to need. So I liked that point.
Being out. I want to piggyback off that. Two more things I want to mention. One is I don't meditate like that. I think there's also a misconception that people think that like in order to meditate you have to sit in silence and like sit Indian style and sit in silence. I lay down when I meditate and I listen to a guided meditation. Like I literally put my headphones in and someone is talking me through it because I can't turn my brain off either. So I think the more we're, again, adaptable and flexible to like different ways of doing things, it doesn't have to be like 100% this way. Otherwise then it won't work, right? Like whatever helps you integrate the information and like slow down. I can't sit in silence either. I will go crazy, but I will lay down and I'll put my headphones in and listen to a guided meditation for 15, 20 minutes. And I'm like, okay, I'm reconnected to myself. I can keep going with my day. So it doesn't always have to be like such an extreme thing either. I don't want people to like think, oh, I'm never gonna be able to do this because like I can't do it quote unquote the right way. Who's saying the right way, right? Aquarian energy is all about like being unique and different and embracing your own uniqueness. So like who's telling you have to do meditation only this way? You can do it any way that you want to do it, right? And in addition to that, I want to say that pets are actually really they like vibrate at a frequency that is also like super there's a reason why, like, if you, I don't know if you know, your listeners have like pets, but there's a reason why, like when your pet sits on your lap, like no one wants to ever get up because there's just like something about their energy that just helps ground us as well. And in addition to what you said about the phones, I think getting out in nature is going to be really, really important because we're so disconnected from nature right now.
Yeah. Well, and that can go back to the manifestation thing and the pet thing.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I wish we did more, but we try and do it when we like go on family walks. I know with busy life, like half the time Kyle walks the dog and then half the time I walk the dog. But when we all go together, or like when I have conscious time, you can integrate that like grounding and manifestation into a chore if you need to. When I walk the dog, when we get to the dog park and I let her off the leash, I take my shoes off and I stand in the grass and I don't pull my phone out until she's done with her little loop. And as much as that's like, I'm still on a chore, like I'm doing something for the dog, at least I like got that little bit of like no cell phone, grounding, nature, me time out as well. So like you can integrate it and it can be doable. I don't do that enough and I probably should do it more. But if that's something you're doing daily, that should be an easy thing to integrate into your daily habit. So tons of ways to do it, plenty of opportunity to kind of create those habits. Everybody always uses January 1st to start a habit. I love that you said like start now. I know we say that all year, but I feel like some people do function as their OCD selves. I'm super OCD, so I get it. Like starting on a Monday or starting on a January 1st, like it makes sense to me. Like I get it. Like Mondays, I'm always like, I'm gonna start something today, and it's like it's Monday, so I get it.
Yeah, I didn't do it on Monday and it's Friday, so therefore I have to wait till next week to start
Exactly. I cannot start it if it's not Monday. So I get if you're just not in the mood to start it yet because it's not January 1st. But January 1st comes, you better be on it then, babe. Like, I'm just saying, like, you better be on it because we've given you guys this excuse if you can start January 1st. If you're not OCD, you have to start before. That's our rule. We're telling you guys this now. So that's great. Okay. Well, before we completely wrap up, I want to now get into like the more fun, goofy stuff. I want to know what your absolute favorite signs are and what your least favorite signs are.
Okay.
Why we like to roast people here. Everybody's in good fun. So I want to hear them both. What's your favorite sign? Let's start there.
Date. Well, it's funny because like my least favorite signs to date are some of my friends' signs. So I like being around them, but I don't like to date them.
Well, and even like, and obviously sexuality is a spectrum, so like girls or boys, but I definitely know that I've had people bring to my attention that like a boy Pisces versus a girl Pisces, so different. And like, so like dating wise, if you're dating stereotypical, like you're a female dating a male Pisces and you don't like male Pisces, all my girlfriends can still be girl Pisces, but I don't have to like male Pisces. So it's like, it makes it difficult. It makes it tricky.
I think like I just naturally gravitate, or maybe there's like a more understanding with water signs in general, with like other Scorpios, Pisces, Cancers. I mean, we're generalizing here, right? Just because like there is like that familiar element. There's like sister signs, right? And then those are ones that I gravitate towards more and just like get along with, usually just because there's like an underlying understanding where we don't really have to explain things. They just kind of get it. And
do you
then
have
I
that
would say
sign? Do you have that one sign that like I feel like everybody has it where it's like you finally ask, oh, like when's your birthday? And then they say it and they're like, oh, another one of those. Or like you
Yeah.
attract those type of people. What's that sign for you?
Well, dating wise, it's always Taurus.
Okay.
Like another Taurus. I can't do another Taurus. No, but it's I love Tauruses, but like friends, it's really interesting because I have a lot of Pisces friends, like a lot, and I have a lot of Gemini friends. And the things that the sign that I actually sometimes butt heads with the most are Geminis and actually Sages. Sages are
So I attract more Sagittariuses than any human being on the planet, I promise you. And I'm in a love hate because like
yeah.
I have so much fun with a Sag girlfriend, but like it always really ends up turning sour and I don't know why. And like I'm trying to like combat that because I have some great Sagittarius girlfriends in my life right now. And I obviously don't want those relationships to go sour at all. But like history has shown it doesn't always like go my way. And then I used to take like all of my exes almost, except for like maybe two, were Sagittarius men. And I like had to break the Sagittarius men cycle because that was
I've dated my fair share of Sages, trust me. But what's really interesting is I think like the things that bother me the most about those two signs are things, it's almost like people are a mirror to us, right? So it's almost like the things that I need to do myself that I don't want to do, right? Like I have a lot of fixed energy in my chart. I tend to be like a little bit stubborn about things. And the thing that drives me crazy about like some Gemini placements and some Sag placements is like their mutability and their adaptability and just like, and I'm just like, can you just make up your mind and like stick to something? And like, you're so unreliable. I don't know if you're going to show up or anything like that. I'm like, just like stay here. Right. And, but it's almost like I need to learn something from that because I'm so fixed. Sometimes I need someone to like push me out of my comfort zone and become more adaptable. So the things that like bother me about those signs are actually things that I need to be learning from.
Oh, I believe that. I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of my like problem with specifically Sagittarius is when I get super close to them. I think a rising Sagittarius is so much fun because like it's just like, it's that more acquaintance vibe. Like you can have fun with them, you can go do things with them. They're adventurous, they want to do things. But the minute like, and I respect this about them, it's very protective of their energy, but if there's something they don't want to do, they won't do it just because you want them to do it. Like they have to want to do it. And I feel like that bothers me because like I'm like that girl that's like, if you need me there, I'm gonna be there. And they're just like, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, how do you function like that? So in a rising, when it's like more of a distant friendship, it's really easy for me to be okay with that energy because they're not as close to me. But when you get close to me and I can't rely on you, it's a detriment because I've got like a loyalty issue. That's like that's in the Aquarius, that's in the Scorpio. Like I've got a lot of Scorpio in my chart too.
Oh
so
yeah, you do. Yeah.
that loyalty
For you, that's the loyalty thing. And also like with all your Aquarius energy, there's so much like innovation. Aquarius, there's a reason why like astrologers will say like Aquarius people are like almost considered like aliens in a way because they're like so ahead of their time. They're so innovative and so like futuristic that like people now can't concept some of their can't like grasp some of their concepts, right? So for you, you're like, why don't you want to do this? Like it's almost like you can just like see into the future and see like futuristic stuff and you're like, let's just do it. And they're like, hold on, I don't know what to do.
Well, and my Aquarius friends out there who are listening to this, you'll resonate with this a lot. I feel like I really struggle sometimes when I have an idea. Like Kyle, for example, his Libra, his straightforward. He gets frustrated when like I have a billion little tangents in a story that I'm trying to get to him because he's like, get to the point. But I sometimes physically can't verbalize what I am trying to explain because I see it up here and I don't know how to say it because the words literally don't exist for it. And like this happens to me quite a bit where I'm like trying to explain something and somebody's like, get to the point. And I'm like, I don't know where the words are because they don't exist. So I don't know how to get you the vision that's in my head. I can't draw it. I can't say it. But like, I need you to trust that it's going to work out. I just need that trust from you because I cannot verbalize it to you.
Right.
And that happens
You're like,
to
this
me
doesn't exist in the English language yet. It's just in my head.
Exactly. And I feel like this
You're
happens to
so
me like,
far ahead of your time. That's why.
I'm just like once a week, I'm like, nobody's going to get that one today. And I'm like, maybe store that one in the back. See if that like reappears in a couple of months. But like, it's wild. So I feel like that there is that piece of that Aquarius side. that Scorpio that I have in me too, I feel like it's like a big loyalty player. Like I want people to give the same energy that I give. And when people don't, I am highly disappointed, which I'm sure you're very used to. Like Scorpio, I feel like Scorpios are like the most let down sign. Like people just let us down constantly, but it's because we have such high standards. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I just think it sets us up for failure quite a bit. So having those two balances where I can't communicate what I want and I'm like already going to be disappointed in you, I've got to be a hard person to please. I get it. Like, I get it.
Yeah, but you found like the perfect sign for you. You found a Libra, which is like all about harmony and balance, and like,
Yep.
You couldn't do well with like another fixed sign. Like there would be too much like either an opposition or a square where you guys would just be butting heads all the time.
Oh, I dated another Aquarius once. Nightmare. A full nightmare. He was like, no, no.
Worse than the Sages?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Debatable. I think more understanding of my perspective because he was a fellow Aquarius.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, the Sages are rough. The Sages are ugh, not my favorite. But it's definitely interesting to see how those like signs meld. I do have a lot of people reach out to me too, just they want to know how compatible they are with their partner. And I never like to enter into it of like, oh, you guys are not compatible. It's more so, okay, how can we fix this and this? Like your communication. Is it your like yeah, usually it's communication style. It could be just how you relate to each other, things like that. And I feel like there's no such thing as like a perfect match for people. You might disagree, but I feel like you can get close, but there's always going to be a different communication style or a difference in how you see your values and morals. And like, you just kind of have to learn how to deal with it and be okay with it. So I think astrology is great for that purpose as well as being able to learn about each other's charts, not just yourself.
I 100% agree. And I don't think there's like any one size fits all when you see like those TikTok videos where everyone's like, oh, this sign is compatible with this sign. I'm like, it's way more layered than that. Like there's, I've dated Sages that their charts have been way more compatible with mine. And then I've dated other charts that on paper would seem more compatible that weren't. So there's just so much, in regards to not just communication styles and stuff, but also like perspectives, how you integrate and process information, like all of that stuff is it helps. I 100% agree with you because I think that's one of the other things that I really love about astrology is it helps me understand people in my life better as well. Cause like there will be times where someone in my family will react a certain way. And I'm like, I don't understand why they can't see my perspective, right? And then I'll like go back and look at their chart and I'm like, oh, I get it. Like this is where their moon is and this is just how they process their emotions and their feelings and this is like they're more reactionary in this way. And like it almost gives me more, as somebody who does have a lot of Scorpio in their chart and is like used to disappointment and has high standards, I feel like astrology gives me more compassion for people because when I see some of their placements, I'm like, I get it now. Like, I get that this is just how you process information. Like, I understand you better. I have more compassion for you. And therefore, I have more patience in how I approach this relationship or dynamic. And therefore, maybe, there won't be as much disappointment.
One, that's literally like the human goal is to figure out how to understand people better. So I think that this is just another tool and that's how it should be used. So yeah, I feel like that's kind of what we're entering into in 2024. I feel like we have a lot of work to do on learning each other better, relationships, things like that. You said you have some seminars coming up. Tell us a little bit about that to kind of close.
Yes. So I have a Pluto in Aquarius webinar that I'm doing. It's going to be on January 18th. It's a Thursday. And Pluto is going to move into Aquarius 2 days after. So it's going to be like we only just scratched the surface here of like what some of these transits really mean. And then also you can always book a reading one-on-one with me on my website, or you can follow me on Instagram, Asya Rose 13. And yeah, that's how people can find me.
And I will put all of your stuff down in the bottom so everybody can kind of find it, links and everything like that.
Thank you.
I'm super excited for that. Also on my end, if you're Tampa local and listening, we are doing, and I'm not sure if you have any experience with this, but I think they're super cool. And I work with a local girl who's really awesome on it. But we're doing a cord cutting ceremony. And I feel like everything that you've kind of talked about today really solidified how healthy that's going to be because we are entering into shifts. So if you're a person that really holds on to things and doesn't like change, attend this cord cutting with us. I feel like it's a great way to let go of things that maybe you were going to struggle to let go of. Sequoia, who's hosting it, is just so talented. She's done a couple of other events with me, and just I feel like a cord cutting is like what I need, and to do that on the 30th and like have it kind of like end out the year, I'm super excited about that. So if that's something you guys are interested in, just reach out to me via DM or email. But yeah, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so
Oh, thank you for
much.
having me. It was a pleasure.
I'm sure we'll talk again soon. Everybody always requests astrology months from me. I switch up monthly. So it's definitely one of those things where I get the astrology request a lot. So I know I'll loop back and do more astrology stuff, but I appreciate you coming
Awesome.
on and helping me out today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And everybody, like I said, links and stuff are below. So make sure to check her out. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.